Hi, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are joining us from in the world today. My name is Meg Alexander. I'm from Power to Fly, and I am super, super excited to get going on today's session with all of you. Now, before I introduce you to our guest speaker, I just want to go over a couple quick housekeeping items. Super important if maybe you haven't joined us for a chat in a while, or if this is your first Power to Fly event. If so, welcome. We're so happy to have you with us. So like I said, my name is Meg. Today's session is being recorded. Now, what this means for all of you is that you just get to sit back and enjoy today's session. You don't have to take notes or worry about if you missed what somebody said. Now, the other great part about this is that while you are kind of kicking back, you also then have the opportunity to participate if you'd like. So you can always turn your cameras on if you would like. You can share your smiling, maskless faces with us safely. No need to be Instagram perfect, y'all. We're on day 4 of Messy Bun Dry Shampoo combo over here. So, no matter whether you are coming to us from a non-traditional workspace, if you have furry coworkers who are supervising you, if you have small children who are very concerned with your Cheerio output this morning, totally understandable. Bring it. We want to meet you where you are. Now, if you do have any kind of privacy concerns, completely understandable. As long as you don't come off mute during today's session, you will not show up on the live stream to our website or to the YouTube channel. You also won't show up on the recording. Now, because we are recording today, the other thing I want to highlight is that if you do want to participate, you do want a question asked and answered, you can do so by sending it into the group chat in Zoom. I'll be there moderating the entire time. You can also always DM me a question if you have one. If you want to ask a question, but you want to be kept anonymous, just send it to me directly. You can find my name, Meg Alexander, on the drop-down menu instead of sending it to everyone. Last but not least, I do want to call out that if you are following along with us today on social media, we would love for you to share with the rest of your network. So please feel free to take photos or video as we go. Let your social media family or social media circle know that you are learning with Power to Fly. You are more than welcome to tag us. You can @us however you'd like. We'd love to share, reshare, tweet, retweet, post, repost, all of that good stuff that y'all share about us. Anything that we can do to kind of widen people's access to these great free resources, we would love to do. So thank you for doing that. If you do want to follow us on any of our various social media channels, we are @Power2Fly on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Now, we do share a whole bunch of really great information. We share blog posts, we share job recommendations, we share all kinds of cool stuff on those various platforms. So I definitely recommend that you follow along and take advantage of all of these amazing free resources. Now, our speaker today is here on behalf of SeatGeek, but before I introduce you to her, I just want to highlight that SeatGeek is one of our valued partners here at Power to Fly. If you do hear anything today that sparks an interest or you want to learn some more about SeatGeek, I very much encourage you to check out their company page. I'm going to share the link with you all in just a moment here. When you get there, it's going to look like what you're seeing on the screen in front of you. And the most important thing to know about this page is that you can get information about SeatGeek. You can learn about more information about their benefits. You can also take a look at their open roles. You can search their open jobs directly from our platform. You can also apply from there as well. But the other thing to highlight here is their events. So if you click on events, it's going to show you a list or snippets of all these great things that they've partnered on with us. But it's also a really good way to know, like, let's say you're interested in SeatGeek and they might have a new event piece coming out before you have a job interview or something. It's a great thing to kind of go back and see what extra information you can glean about the company from there. Really awesome way to take some great knowledge with you into the interview stage. The other thing to know is that if you are actively seeking, but maybe don't see anything right now, in SeatGeek's open roles that suits you, go up to the top right-hand corner of this page. There's going to be a big pink button that says follow. If you click that, it's going to put you on SeatGeek's follow network. It does a lot of really great things for you, but effectively it works like your friend at SeatGeek. It's going to let them know that you are interested in working with them even before you fill out an application, but it's also going to allow us to keep SeatGeek on your radar. So we're going to let you know when they post new roles. That way you don't have to keep, kind of going back and searching and researching job boards, playing that ever so fun fun game of what's different since the last time I was here. So really, really great way to make sure that you keep up with companies that have really sparked your interest, and doing it in a way that lets us do a little bit of that heavy lifting for you. So anything that we can do to help, we would love to do that. So definitely take advantage of this free function of powertofly.com. Now, the meat and potatoes of today's event. I'm very excited to introduce y'all to Tiffany. So Tiffany is a senior software engineer at SeatGeek, and currently she focuses on building platforms to drive better insights and actions for event promoters. Now, Tiffany has always had a passion for data, which led her to first join and help build out SeatGeek's data platform team 8 years ago. From there, she took on data engineering and tech lead roles in other companies and has since come back to SeatGeek to apply her experience to a familiar yet new role within their space. Tiffany, we are so happy to have you with us today. I'm very excited to dive into questions, but before we do that, is there anything else that you would like our audience to know about you before we get started?
I guess I'm excited to chat. One other thing is I know there's some interest in maybe the remote experience, and I've kind of gone like, between that full spectrum of remote to in person, and happy to chat to that specific how that affects a lot of the parts of my career so far.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that, Tiffany. Okay, so last but not least, before we dive into questions, these are some of the main takeaways that you can expect to get from today's conversation. Now, we identified these via conversations with Tiffany, as well as by looking at the questions that you all submitted when you registered for today's session. So all of that to say that if you took time to be here with us live, if you wanted to make sure that you were here with us for this event, we want to make sure that you get prime treatment. So if you are here, we want to make sure that you get to ask your questions. So these are what we're going to try and cover. But if you want us to dive in deeper on something that Tiffany has said, if you want us to expand on one of the answers, maybe you asked a question when you registered and you're not sure if we'll get to it or not before time runs out. The best way is to ask. Put your questions into the group chat. I will do my absolute best to make sure we get to all of them. Please, just let us know what you want to know, y'all. I want to make sure that I get y'all answers, and knowing what you want to know makes it a lot easier for me to do that. So please feel free. Now, we're going to talk about some tips to help you stay on top of changes within software and data. We're going to discuss some of the key soft skills that could help you climb that ladder. And then we're also going to talk about some of the ways to best evaluate your professional opportunities. So as we dive in on today's questions, the first one that I wanted to discuss was maybe a little bit broader, but this person had wanted to know if there was any advice you would have liked to have gotten when you were first starting your career in software and in data. So Tiffany, what do you think? What would you have liked to have been told, early on when you were just starting in this field?
Yeah, I think I would have liked to know how much I can rely on others for help and how much others are willing to help. It's like my approach at that point, because it was I had started my first job out of college was data related, but not quite at at sort of a like standard or like one of these, like a data scientist role. And I kind of had to carve that role for myself out at that company. And then as part of that, I was interested in transitioning to a more traditional software engineering role. And so like in that process, that the job seeking process from that first role I had was a little bit like on my own shoulders, that I took that to mean like, oh, I have to play catch up with like all of the things I didn't learn at my first job. And let me just find all of the most relevant technologies right now and like start studying. And like that was great, but also it turns out that like I could have gotten to the point faster if I just asked people in my network, or just even looked up companies that I was interested in and like reached out to people to ask hey, like what do you, like I'm kind of, new to this. Here's where I'm approaching from. Like, what are your thoughts here? Like just relying on other people more to give a little bit of guided advice. Yeah.
Sorry, I lost my unmute button. No, I think that is fabulous advice and definitely something that people should know earlier. I think that was when I came out of school, especially, even though I wasn't going to work in a field where I went to school, I definitely felt like I could not say things like, I don't know. It had to be either yeah, or I'm sure I can figure that out. It never was like, I don't know that. Could you teach me? Or could
Yes,
could I go talk to somebody who does? Could you brush it up on this? Like, could we review it just to make sure I'm on the right path? I was very of the mindset of like, you're new, you're new, so you have to prove value. You have to prove value, so tell them everything you know. And it's just not, it doesn't help anybody, right? It doesn't help you to
exactly.
get your footing. It just helps teach you how to do it on your own, which may or may not be the best way to do it, right?
Yes, totally. Yeah, that mindset of I have to prove my worth through this like very specific way of demonstrating knowledge was exactly that mindset. And it's not what good employers shouldn't be looking for that. It's really about the potential to teach and work together. And I think that yes, like demonstratable skills are important, but only to a certain extent, and no one expects candidates to know everything. And I think that was something I wish somebody had told me.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so let's talk about what it's like to be fresh in the industry. This person had written in asking, what opportunities can a candidate fresh out of college find within this field? Is there a specific way that's better to sell ourselves during the interview process when we don't have any of that industry related experience? All right, so what was this like for you? What was your experience like when you came out of college and were trying to find a role within the field?
Yeah, it was interesting because there is definitely the, like I was saying just now, like the being able to demonstrate some baseline of skills, but I really think that's a proxy for, okay, like this person can learn quickly, or is like looking at the right approach to solving the problems that they have had experience with, whether that's at a different in a different career or just from school. And so I think that being able to pull from whatever experience you have to talk to that problem solving and sort of like a maturity and like approach to whatever hand you were dealt. Like I think that's really important. So like I think for instance, if all you have is like school experience and you haven't done internships either, which I didn't do, and I know a lot of folks who didn't either, and are wondering like, what do I draw from then? Like there are a lot of things that are not like you might not even be aware of that interviewers are taking notes of, and like are like, oh, like this is like fantastic, like, and a lot of those are around how did I deal with like a problem situation with like teammates, like in a group project scenario, like there was a really great example where somebody just offhand was talking about their project in an interview. And they mentioned, yeah, I had trouble with one teammate who, wasn't being responsive. And I just reached out to them, asked what was up. And like, they were going through some tough things. So I said, take some time over the weekend, let's check in on Monday. And it was just, it was so mature. And like demonstrating those facets is super important, as important as any technical skills you might have. So the thing is, like with this field too, like with both software and data, the more years pass, the more these skills are very teachable, so it's really more about how you as a unique individual approach learning, working with your teammates, and leveraging the experiences you have. So I think that's how I would highlight your unique experience in an interview.
Oh, I like that. I very much think you're right. It does have to be more about what you can bring for the team, and like your potential, as opposed to like trying to build up some sort of like laurels to rest on, right? And I think that is a huge like mind shift if you're trying to talk through an interview, right? Doing it one way is completely antithetical to doing it the other, and so like making that shift in your head can feel really weird at first. Was there anything that worked for you when you were trying to make sure that that's where you were coming from when you were interviewing, when you were trying to show off or to show your best side to the interviewer?
Yeah. So in that, when I mentioned the basically the transition to like a more tech focused industry, like I consider my like that first job into my second job, and the second job was actually SeatGeek, so it's kind of funny. But that job application cycle was that like, okay, how do I leverage the experience I've had so far, which is 2 years, and doing pretty niche consulting related work that has a lot of data and statistics, but isn't maybe what people were looking for. And so for me, I try to highlight a lot of like ownership pieces, a lot of self, what do you call it? Like being proactive. So there were a lot of like, we basically worked on a consulting project kind of schedule. So there were like, like a couple months where you had to like really help this one client with like understanding insights or like driving some actions on whatever it was. And just like finding ways to align like the technical skills and the value in building that with the output of those projects. Like I basically taught myself how to program as part of my job, even though it wasn't really directly related to the job itself. And I think that was really helpful. Like I imagine, I didn't ask, but I imagine the people who interviewed me were like, oh, that's a very interesting like check mark. So yeah, that kind of thing.
I like that. If you've done something similar when y'all have been interviewing, let us know. Let me know in the chat. I'd love to see some examples of how other people have tackled this or have dealt with a similar situation while you were interviewing. Because let's be real, all of us were new at some point, right? And some of us who have changed industries multiple times have been new a lot of times. So the more more we can help each other with our experiences, the better. All right, let's talk about what you think are some of the most relevant hard skills for people to have in the industry nowadays. We've been hearing a lot about soft skills, but let's talk about hard skills first. Do you think there are any that are either evergreen or something that is like most widely applicable across roles within software and data?
Yeah, I think that this is a great question. Because where do you start? I think that if you were to generalize and try to like focus, assume you know nothing and have nothing to like experience wise, knowledge wise in either software or data, I would say fluency in SQL is going to be important for both. Like it is definitely important for data because like it or not, that's just going to be a very normal mode of accessing and like processing data, even if you were going to do something more advanced with it later on, like just having it like, and it's very teachable and very learnable. And so like just coming to the table with like, yeah, like this is, like I got this in the bag is great. Like writing queries for especially analytical oriented queries, but just kind of like general, just knowing your basic syntax for SQL really well. And I think like pick any general scripting or high level programming language and being solid in that, because nowadays, like any interview, like people are going to be really accommodating for what experience you've had so far, and they should be fine. Like good technical screens should be accomplishable in different languages and environments, and so like you shouldn't feel weird if your main experience is with this language that maybe is not used at this company. Just being forthright, like, hey, and it should be on your resume. So like they should also be accommodating when they see that. Like I think that just being fluent in the sort of like very basic like data types and like logic control flow, like just if and like, can I loop over things? Do I know how to like break apart a list? Like that sort of stuff is still like really crucial. And I think like then like after that, like if you're going to more specific roles or like have specific interests, then I would pick and choose depending on what that is. And there's so many these days that I wouldn't try to cover like everything. I would try to pick like, okay, like I'm trying to, orient myself towards like I really care about I don't know, like database management and like having really good principles there. Like then pick some like learn more about the differences between like Postgres and MySQL, and like like you can talk through those. There's always going to be relevant tidbits to like any company you're interviewing for, even if it's like a pretty specific or specialization kind of topic that you're primarily interested in. So like yeah, those two basics, and then figure out where you want to devote more time into.
I like that. Now, do you have any advice for people who are trying to foster some of these skills when their current job doesn't require them to learn? Do you think it's something of like maybe letting your curiosity guide you? Are there like paths that people should kind of put themselves on to like self-teach them stuff? Like how would you handle this if your role didn't require you to keep developing the skills that you will need?
Yeah, that can be challenging depending on what kind of role you're in. Like I was lucky that I could like align that self-study to what I was currently doing in that role. I think, and I think also it can depend on what kind of relationship you have with your manager or environment that you're in, where maybe you can, be honest about like, hey, like, I actually think there's a big opportunity for our team if we were to, look into some technical skills, and doing like a learning thing as a group might help open that. So you're not just, like kind of in your lunch break or like sneakily trying to learn things. Like, I think always having a way to do that openly is really nice. But again, that really depends on if you have a healthy working environment that you can do that in. If you don't, this then, like there's so many different paths and it really depends, but like, if you can stomach it, and like, I think, and it depends on the person, but a lot of folks I know have just cold quit whatever job they're in, and just like that peace of mind of not having to worry about what they were currently doing that was perhaps frustrating and not exciting. Like it just gave them more energy, even though it was more risky financially, to have dedicated time to focus on this. There are boot camps. I think that structurally that is really helpful if you're somebody who likes to have the like accountability and sort of a like team environment for learning things together. So I think it depends on you as a person and what environment you're in. Sorry for the sort of general answer.
No, I mean, sometimes that's the information we have, or that's the life experience we have. So thank you for sharing that. There's a lot of people sharing stuff in the chat here. Mary said, along the same lines, that's awesome if you're in a good job that supports your learning. But if you're not, then you can join coding organizations. Now, Mary had mentioned Girls in Tech and Women Who Code. Those are both amazing orgs. We also work with Trans Tech Social, Power to Fly does. So that's another really awesome outlet, or really awesome resource if you are from the transgender community. But yeah, super, super interesting. And this is, so really, really great conversations we're opening up. So thank you, y'all. Please feel free to keep putting those questions in the chat. We had one more question around the same area that people wanted to talk about soft skills. Now, are there any specific soft skills that you've seen be important in career growth when it comes to someone within the tech industry?
Yeah, so many. And it's funny because I know there are other industries like this, but definitely in tech, it's kind of funny because when you're starting out your career, and for like sort of the beginner to intermediate, like phase of it, the technical skills are kind of the more important side of it. Like it's about being able to execute, like becoming like really proficient, and like have a good base of understanding of like what your productivity is like, so you can like be good at estimating, and like be good at making decisions about like what architecture, what technology you choose, all of that. But like at a certain point, it then becomes about scaling that experience and like knowledge out more, and you're more working not with the code directly, but with other people who are then the ones to make the code happen. And so it's like you have to become good at communicating. And it's funny because I feel like we ought to, depending on what kind of environment you're in, people de-emphasize, or like all of a sudden it's like required and you didn't know for like the last 5 years, and there's a lot of like folks that are trying to become more senior that I know that at that point, that's when they're like, oh, okay, like how do I like work on my communication? How can I like be a leader without being a manager? Like what does that look like? How do I like influence others and get people bought in? And I think those are really great skills. I think like even getting to that point, there's lots of things you can do, like prioritization, and being like in your like more starter phase of the career, where you're more of an individual contributor, like your scope of work is what you care about, like being good at prioritization and communicating to like your the project lead, your manager, whatever, about challenges that come up, like timing related things, like, oh, I think we're going to miss on this, but I think that if we cut XYZ corner, we could actually make it. Here's why I think that's an okay approach. Like that kind of stuff is really valuable. And I wish that we maybe talked about it more, or like gave people more opportunities to practice it, but do it when you can.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. I think you're right. There are, it is one of those things you kind of have to like take the opportunities to flex these muscles where you can. And sometimes they're not in the areas that you would think they are, but it's still, it's still a bit able to develop those skills. We had a really good question in the chat, so I wanted to go back and take this one. Jasmine had asked, how proficient should you be in a specific technical skill before putting it on your resume? I started learning Java since I saw many positions asking for the skill, but I'm not sure what level I have to be able to, to include it as a skill that you possess.
That's a great question. Yeah. Yeah. Because it's funny because a resume is such a limited view of your experience and it has to be concise, and so I think listing it is fine, but hopefully you can like contextualize it to the degree you feel comfortable. And like, hopefully that comes out in a way, like in your initial interview, if like the specific technologies you've had experience with are somehow important for the role, like hopefully that comes out then, like, oh, I know I'm applying for a role that is very, like on a Java heavy team. Here's where I'm coming from. I've done it mostly from school, so I know a lot of the basic syntax, but I haven't had to work in a production environment with it. But I can get up to speed really fast. Like just being really honest about that, I think is really helpful. Because I think like the interview process is so intimidating, but it's really like both sides are trying to like find the commonality and like help find a positive outcome. And it doesn't help either side to like hide things, so don't feel like you need to put up a front or like talk to things that you don't know. I think it feels scary to say I actually don't know this as much as it might be, you might be looking for in like your, what is it called, like your most desired kind of candidate. But I feel really confident that I can learn it, and I'm really excited about XYZ parts of this role. Like just demonstrating where you're coming from, I think does a lot.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree with that, and it's never a bad thing to say like, hey, I'm not fluent in this, but it's something that I'm very interested in. So I've been working on it. I've been studying on it independently or doing this in my free time on the side, blah, blah, blah. All of that shows that like you have a dedicated interest in this area. And frankly, people can learn very much anything if they're interested in doing it. It's when you're trying to learn something that you have no interest in and you don't really want to be learning, that it's like a really big chore. So showing, You're right, that not only is this an interest of yours, but it's something that you are prioritizing for yourself, even if your current job is not. I mean, I think that's wonderful. It shows that you have that curiosity, you have that drive to learn, which is not found in everyone. I will tell you from my many years of experience in the work world, not everyone is curious. Not everyone wants to know, or wants to learn something new or something different. So if you do, let them know that. I think that's great.
Yeah, that curiosity, like just to tack on, like that curiosity is so key, because I think I was like this too when I was like, yeah, I'm just going to learn all these things. And to what end? like being able to identify for yourself like what that is and like talk through it is amazing. You're not just learning it because it's the thing that people want to see on your resume. It's because like I mean, it is to some extent, but like being able to talk about it at that like more the secondary level helps you stand out above the like sea of resumes that like just all have Java listed. So like, oh yeah, I learned this. It was just sort of my first programming language, but I decided I would try to make a project, little web service that does this. Or like you didn't do that, and that's also fine. But you're like, I learned some crazy thing about this language, and like how funny. Like just being able to talk about like something interesting, the curiosity aspect is huge.
Oh yeah, 100%. People find me fascinating because all I do is like bring up random trivia that I remember, because my brain, that's how my brain works. So like I can tell you that Florence Nightingale, the nurse, invented the pie chart, y'all. It's true. It's true. Look it up. It's bonkers, but I'm telling you, you can pull that one out in a lot of various situations and people will be like, oh, wow, how did you learn that? Well, you see, I was interested in blah, 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 blah. And so as I was looking it up, this is something else I found out. Like show off the curiosity. I think it does wonders for people to know that like, even if you don't know something, you will go and find out. You want to know. It's not just that you have to know, you want to know. All right. So let's talk about let's kind of pull back a little bit. We had a lot of people that still had questions regarding soft skills, specifically communication skills. Okay. So this person said, I constantly struggle with my communication skills. It's very hard for me to communicate what I'm working on and to pivot away from a technical oriented language. Do you have any advice for communicating more effectively? Now, I think this is a thing that people struggle with on both sides of if you are in tech or not. But let's talk about what it's like if you are trying to be able to communicate with people outside of just tech-oriented language. What's your experience been like with this in your career?
Yeah, I think for me, what helps a lot is framing everything or contextualizing things within the what is the, how does it relate to the business or like to the team even? Like usually the team you're on, well, sometimes the team is like web platforms. So it's a little more like tech focused anyways, but even then there's like, why are these the top 3 objectives of my web platform team this quarter? Like how does that relate to what I'm doing? And usually those objectives, even if you're on a more infra platform team, have something to do with business. It's like, yeah, like our infra costs are way too high. Like that's meaningful because we're getting, 200% growth in users this year. And that's a lot to estimate. So anyways, like just finding that I think is really valuable. And then like relating it back to the work you're doing. And you might be like, oh, I don't really know how this relates. Like I'm just like fixing a bug here or there. Like why, like how can I find the that pull? I think so I think that having a good relation with your PM or just like project lead or whoever it is that like might be a little more connected to that wider context, there's always going to be something that you can pull from. And then I guess it depends on like who you're trying to explain this to. Like, I guess I was assuming like somebody, like a friend who doesn't work at your company. So you're also explaining like what is my role? Like, how does it relate to like live events? And like, they're just asking you like, why are the, fees so high? But, you're trying to be like, well, I matter in a different way. So like, I always like to talk about like, okay, well, actually there's like 2 sides to this business. There's, and I work on this side because it's more, dealing with like the actual like venues. And you might be surprised to know there's lots of like events that are thrown by not the venues. And that's why they need data in a certain way, like just like tying it from like a really high level down to like what you're doing. And then finally being like, this week, I happen to be working on like a really interesting update to calculate different metrics in a much more robust way. It turns out we were looking at it this way because we didn't know about a certain perspective. They don't like looking at these seats, whatever it is. Like they want to filter data in this way. Like being able to then like go down to like exactly what you're doing. I think that path is fun sometimes and can help with like because then you like if you like use that as a process, then I think like practicing that down the line, you'll know where to like jump in, because you might be talking to somebody who like already knows all that business stuff, so you can jump right to the like like this week like data accuracy is like the huge thing, like as like and then you can explain your work at the level that they are looking for.
I like that. And you're right, it is incredibly useful no matter who you're talking to, because you don't want to be you don't want to be kind of like, it's not placating. God, English is hard today, y'all, which is bad when it's the only language you speak, but like, you don't want to be patronizing, right? You want to be explaining something to someone, but you don't want to be alienating them in the process. And it can be very difficult to try and figure out, like, does this person really understand what you're talking about? Or did they only, like me, grasp like maybe 3 keywords and they're kind of hoping they can piece it together as you go, being able to understand that, or to pivot into, up into like, oh yeah, you understand at this level, so let's talk here, or pivot into, no, none of this is landing. Let's go down here and see what then we need to clarify from there. So yeah, it's super, super useful, task to undertake. Do you think this is something that you're constantly working at, or do you ever think that you get to a stage in your career where you're like, yeah, I'm confident I can explain this to anybody, it'll be great?
Oh man, great question. I think it's something that I'm constantly working on. I hope that like others are as well, no matter how, like if you're a director or CEO, because and I think what you just said with the like trying to figure out what they already know and like making sure you're not patronizing, that's huge, because it's like you can learn how to explain things at different levels, but like sussing out where they're at in a way that's not like uncomfortable, like you're not like, well, tell me what you know already. Like, it's like you're not putting them up for a test, but really that does help to know like where they're coming from, like learning how to ask that question so that you're like meeting, like finding where to meet either side at is really really hard skill because everyone's different and they might respond to like different different ways of getting there differently. So yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, not everybody wants to do it bluntly, right? Like one of my favorite ways to ask is just to be like, hey, I'm not sure how much understanding you have of this subject. So if I'm telling you something you already know, let me know. So that way I'm not wasting your time. And honestly, sometimes it's just that easy. Like it feels weird to like call it out and be like, I don't know what I'm supposed to be, how you want me to tell you about this. So you just tell me when I've got it right. You're trying to level set. It is a very easy way to kind of like level that playing field for everyone.
Yes.
And kind of puts everybody else on, kind of on the same plane of, yeah, I already understand this, or no, I don't. Can you go back? And trying to make that not only comfortable for you, but also for your audience. Yeah. All right. So we had a lot of people that had questions about prioritization, especially when everything around you feels incredibly urgent. So once, I'm assuming that you've experienced this once in your life. What was that like, and how did you handle it then versus, like the 100th time you experienced it?
Yeah. I think it's so tough because especially when you're newer to a role / newer to your career, like you might not know when it's okay to push back and what does it mean. Like there are definitely moments where I was like, yeah, I guess everything's a priority and it's like my fault that we're like not able to answer every question that comes our way, but it's really not. Like there should always be like a rank order to stuff, and like if everything's high priority, then nothing is like that. I really believe that's true. So if you had to like, put feet in a fire, like, like if you like pose the question back to your stakeholders and you're like, okay, well, I have capacity to do X and Y. Right now I'm doing X and thinking that that's the highest priority because of, whatever the content is you're bringing, so that you can have a little more agency in that discussion as well. Like you're like, I think this is going to be a quicker, assuming it's like a data science and like analytical, like maybe you're trying to generate some insights. Like, I think this is gonna be a quicker question to answer. We're going to be able to act on it faster. Like, I think we should do this first. And then let's see if, like you can make moves on that. And like, let's return to this other harder question later. That's a way. And then there's also like the similar thing with like building features, like more traditional software engineering. It's like, yeah, this is something that's really well scoped. Like I already have a lot of familiarity with this area. Like I think because we're trying to, like get all of the event page redesign like completed, like we should just do this thing first. I think it's like, yeah, it can get harder though when you're like, hopefully that helps with like tactical prioritization, like sort of things within a 2-week to 1-month cycle, because it's pretty clear like what are the, like the changing, very urgent priorities at that point. If people don't have good answers for that also, like I think that like I want to talk about like the if you're not in a position where not in a healthy environment work-wise where you're able to push back, like I think that can be really tough. And I think that like finding other support, like if this is like depending on what kind of like working model there is, like a lot of times there's like data scientists and like a team, and like the head of that team or like area is like demanding all these things. If that's sort of your setup and like that person is sort of like the in control of your plate of work, like finding ways to convince them, like build a good relationship with them, finding ways to like go around them, not around them, but like get support from peers and from other like there's always going to be other people looking at the same area. And if you can bring in like, oh, well, I know that you said PM that this is more important, but actually, I heard from the all hands today and I was chatting with like so-and-so from adjacent team that like this might actually be the best way to answer your question. Like figuring out a way to like get the get your what you think is the right priorities like surfaced, I think is really key. Yeah. So
yeah, I like that. And I very much like what you said about, kind of taking it back to whoever's trying to get you to add a new priority or change up things around. I like laying that out of like, hey, here's what I have on deck for today because reasons I was told to do blah, blah, blah. if you want me to reprioritize to then put this at the top of my to-do list, awesome. But what do you want me to do with the rest? I think maybe we should do it like this. Do you agree? You know, because we're coming up with a potential solution. It doesn't mean it has to be the exact right thing. It just, you're showing whoever your supervisor is or whoever's, you know, adding tasks to you, that you're not just wanting everything handed to you, right? You have a brain, you are thinking on, you know, on your own behalf, even of like, how could I get this done more easily, more, you know, faster for, you know, faster turnaround time for the solution, you know, whatever you think that that value add might be that makes it better for you. I mean, even if it's just where I'll be able to take this at a slower pace, so there'll be less errors later on. You know, like that's not a bad thing to say. Everybody makes mistakes. We're all going to make them. So, you know, creating a positive environment for like maybe the least, I don't know, detrimental mistakes, the better, you know, I like that. Okay, we had a lot of questions regarding climbing the ladder through, you know, through the tech sphere. This person said, I'm all about horizontal growth, but sadly, I'm not getting any salary increases from lateral movements that I've taken to expand my skill set. Do you have any advice for someone who's looking to climb the ladder and land the promotion? Where do you see the biggest opportunities? So let's talk about what you think, what you would advise somebody to do who is trying to climb upwards on a ladder. What recommendation would you give them?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And I think I would like not push back on the idea, but just talk about the idea of like, should lateral transfers always like come with a compensation increase, and like just kind of talking through like the goals that you have in mind when you're making any sort of switch, lateral or not, like what are you hoping to get out of it? Because I do think sometimes it's like, I'm actually okay with this pay drop because it opens doors longer term, and like just being realistic with like what you're trying to get out of it. So something I've started doing, which is when I'm considering like a role switch is, or like, you know, starting like job applications or whatever, like it's just identifying like before even talking to companies, like just what are some goals I want to get in 2 years? And sometimes that might be like compensation increase is like the top goal. Like, you know, I want to like it's important. It doesn't really matter why. Like, but let's just say like that's my primary goal. Then like that might mean like sacrificing the like skill expansion aspect that, you know, might come with the more lateral transfers, because you're trying to leverage the experiences you have in order to like, you know, like jump to like the promotion. Like if your main experience is in data, like it was for me, and like I could have kept down that track solidly and just like, you know, maybe my next move, if I hadn't like done more of a lateral switch, would have been like, okay, I want to lead the like data engineering or data platform team at like a startup of this size. Like that's kind of like the experience I want to go for. That would be for me, like it would have been more of a vertical, you know, like a promotion. And for me, I did the more lateral switch into like, let's leverage a lot of the data experience I have, but I also want to like do work on products that are not like heavily data centric, and just, you know, like kind of like round out my full stack web development experience. So it was, you know, for me more of a like equivalent compensation. Like I wasn't looking for like a compensation increase as part of that. So like I think that like evaluating what you're trying to get out of your experiences. That being said, there, like I think every role switch or job application, like, you know, like I think people say this, like it's when you apply or when you switch roles is like the best time to get a salary increase. So I get that as well. And I think like definitely like playing to your strengths, even when you're doing a lateral switch, can be huge. Like maybe you were a manager or you had a lot of leadership experiences for like personnel related things. Like even if it's a technical like stack change or whatever, like you can still leverage that a lot by just like speaking to it. And you know, maybe that gives you like they get more, the people interviewing you get more confidence in your ability to like ramp up quickly, or like be you know, like okay, like they can probably take on like tech lead type roles even if they're still ramping up on the tech stack itself. A lot of like the like driving the team productivity, like they're going to be solid. So like just figuring out a way to leverage that, I think can help. Yeah,
I like that. No, I think that's great advice. We are getting a ton more questions in the chat, so keep sending them in if y'all have them. We'll get to as many as we have time for today. to keep us moving along the same subject, a lot of people wanted to know if certain things they were doing would be holding them back in the industry. What have you seen over the span of your career? Are there any commonalities that you've seen for people who are holding themselves back, who are, preventing growth in their own careers?
Yeah, I think it can depend on what like archetype of like a senior role you most vibe with and are trying to target, because I know that for myself, and you can look this up. The one I looked at most recently was from like staffeng.com, I think, but it's like archetypes of staff engineers. And there's 4, and I think there could be more, but like that's already helpful for seeing like, oh, I gravitate towards this versus I don't. And so identifying what it is that like really motivates you, I think can help with that, because for me, I'm really motivated by like the impact that I deliver like on a business side. Like, so I've always been I always want to know the context, like overarching context for why we're doing this. Like at some point I want to be, I am in rooms for decisions, but like that's like I want to be in more and more of those like rooms where we're doing a lot, and like there's an archetype for that. It's like the right hand or something, and I'm like, yeah, that totally jives. And there's also like like folks who don't enjoy that, and they would rather be like, yeah, like I would love to get really deep in this like technical area, and like eventually like I'm the one proposing all the ways we should like redesign, think about the future, the plan for like how we deal with all the data for this company, like or the plan for like how do we keep expanding for like high traffic on sales, like just sort of like finding what area like matters to you, and then figuring out how you want to deal with it. And so like the advice for like what's holding you back then, the reason I went on that long tangent is because for me, that the archetype I want to shoot for, what can hold me back is like not doing like cross team communication enough, not like building relationships with the other sides of the organization, so that people can see me as a leader and like remember that that's somebody who like is both technical but like in service of like the wider business. And for like the more let's say the archetype of the architect, like the more like deep focus, that's still important, but in slightly different ways. Like it's that I think is more about building influence within like the teams or engineers that you have in your org that care about the thing that you're an expert in, and like buying them or getting their buy-in and like getting them to want to build the vision that you see. So I guess it's both communication skills, TLDR communication in different ways.
I absolutely love this. And you're right. It is kind of being able to communicate that for yourself, but I mean, it does demand that you sort of know that about yourself to start with. So yeah, I think that that's wonderful to kind of open yourself up to those opinions or to that kind of insight from yourself as well as from others. All right, let's talk about mentorship. Would you say that your career has been influenced by mentors at all? And if so, how did you connect to them? What did their support look like?
Yeah, definitely. And it has been different for different mentors, which I think is great. And how have they helped? So I think it was really important for me to have somebody I could like kind of just quickly send dumb questions to, even though again, like I think that like healthy environments, and SeatGeek is one of those, but I think it's just like a mental hurdle I have to get through is like, like being like, okay, asking those dumb questions, like, wait, I don't actually know what that is. Should I? And like having somebody you can like practice having those questions sent to. And then like over time you realize, oh, actually no one knows that. That's awesome. Like, and then you like build the confidence to ask those questions in a more public forum. Like, I think that has been huge for me. And I have noticed that over time, I'm not like as quickly going to like my mentor to ask that dumb question. I'm like, just like, sending it into the public eye. I also think that as you get further along in your career, that's also like, it's almost asking like the fake dumb question as a senior person, so that like people know that it's okay to ask this, even if you actually know the answer, like, oh, remind me.
Oh, I've
like,
done that
how
before.
does this work? Yeah, like it's huge.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And then like,
It's like letting people know, like it's okay to ask a dumb question. It's okay to ask a question that you yourself still think is dumb.
Yes.
That's okay. It's fine.
Yes.
I'd rather have you ask the question than like learn how to do it the wrong way or something, right?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And it's fun because I think in things like Slack, like it's fun to get like the +1s to your question. Like there's a lot of ways that you can get validation that you're like, you're not actually asking dumb questions, and that can actually build a lot of confidence. So yeah, that was a type of mentor that was important. And then like, especially as I get further along in my career, like having mentors that are maybe like 1 or 2 steps further that I can talk to about like, all right, like is this valid? Like sort of, I'm having frustrations with the organization in XYZ ways. Like, how does that like, and I want to do this in like 2 to 3 years. Like, how does, what do you think? Like having somebody who can do that, like for me, it's like staff engineers or like directors, depending on like what, like what type of organization or like experience they have. Like that's been really helpful. And let's see, I think like, especially early on, it was really nice to have like those dumb questions I asked, like they were maybe more like specific to a technical area. And even now I still like I'm like very like happy that I have people that I know I can ask the front end questions to, or like the, the specific .NET questions to, or whatever it is. Like, it's nice to have that, and building those relationships. I want to say that like having, even if it wasn't like an explicit mentor, like having some group or like some way to like for me as a woman in tech, like it was really important to like, have the support of other women engineers, and like, whether that's in your company or like at meetups and like things that people have already mentioned, like that's been really huge. And you can find a lot of like just environmental mentorship from that, like just being in that atmosphere. And I really like that. Finding those relationships, mostly I've done them through work, just they happen organically. Like often I'll ask somebody like, hey, I was curious about this, like it relates to the thing I'm trying to do, I'm curious why it's done this way. And like demonstrating the curiosity, you'll get a sense of like how, like, are they somebody that will be continuing to like support those questions? And like like those are ways to find technical mentorships. And then hopefully there's like mentorship program, or if not, like you can suggest it, or like just find 1 or 2 people to like start up that like a small group almost to like help have those discussions, even like as a group. We had that at Teachers Pay Teachers. It was I think it was literally called Women in Tech, but like just the women engineers, and we just had like a bi-weekly like lunch meeting, and that was really helpful. So yeah.
I love that idea. No, I think that's wonderful. And we are getting some crazy great questions in the chat here. I'm going to try and get to let's try and get to one more before. I know we want to save a little bit of time at the end to talk a little bit more about SeatGeek. So let's talk about self-advocacy. How do you feel like advocating for yourself can impact your own work? This person says, I'm having a hard time, especially in remote environments, especially finding space to communicate my own achievements. I have absolutely felt this. I've been remote for 3 years, and it can feel like if you're not celebrating your achievements, then maybe nobody else is either, which like is okay. I'm not a child. I don't need a birthday party thrown for me because I answered your email. I would like it, but you don't have to. But yeah, like I think this is something a lot of people struggle with, especially when you're remote, because it can feel weird, right? Trying to make sure that people know what's going on with you. So in your experience, is that self-advocacy more important when you're remote? Is it less important? Are there different ways you should go about doing it? What is your experience been?
Yeah, that is such a good question and really important. Because I think I think that there's always structure and like kind of hierarchy, I guess, in like whatever environment you're in. And if not stated, it's just an implicit like undercurrent. And like I think that remote work, especially if you're not at like a remote first or like friendly company, you are in that hierarchy, you are like more of a second tier citizen. And so in those environments, it's especially important to figure out ways to like self-advocate, or like just, and it's so hard because if you're already like coming at it from a like, oh, I feel forgotten, and like, how do I, like you're like already a little insecure about it. And I think the best I think the way that would make me feel most comfortable and what I would start like trying to do is like, what is it, like making structure that doesn't exist that enables you to have the advocacy that you need. And because it shouldn't be a burden that like people are bearing individually, like ideally any environment you're in, like the structure supports it. If it doesn't exist, yeah, like just finding a way to do that. So that could be like, you know, like I think for stand-ups or like rituals that happen already, like, you know, making sure that like maybe sometimes they're rotated, like the remote person facilitates it. And like retro, I think, is a great one for like feeling like you're accountable and like present and can talk about stuff. And also if there's like a wins as part of that retro, like being able to shout out and like feel like the whole team is seeing what everyone is doing, even if they're not like in the office. Yeah, and like I think demos, like hosting things, finding ways that you as a remote person are the one facilitating the forum, I think is what I would do.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. Crucial advice coming from Tiffany there. Thank you. Okay, we have 4 minutes left in today's session. It always goes way too quickly, but I want to make sure that we saved a little bit of time to talk about SeatGeek. Now, one of the things that you shared with us, the screen that y'all are looking at now, are some questions that we asked of Tiffany before today's session. One of the things that I want to talk about is your top tips for someone who's interviewing. Now, are these SeatGeek specific, or are these tips that you would recommend to someone no matter where they're interviewing?
Yeah, I would recommend this for anyone, but I know that it's definitely relevant here because we are very, we are definitely very, empathetic and like conscious of the fact that we don't know everything because we have had so many curveballs thrown at us in this space. And so it's really about like finding people who are adaptable, like can talk about like, yeah, like honestly, like this didn't go as expected and here's how we pivoted is like a really really helpful, like, okay, they're probably going to do okay here, like marker. Yeah, and like at the same time, like just because it's like ticketing is like such an old industry, and also like there's a lot of inefficiencies from it, you know, like being there's, you know, like incumbents like Ticketmaster and all that, you know, have kind of set the standards for so long that we're coming in trying to like find those inefficiencies and like figure out new you know, approaches to addressing them. And like so being able to be insightful about like, okay, where's the product at right now? Like I'm joining this company and like here's where I see you guys solving problems, right? Here's where maybe like, you know, like we could do better. Like, is that right? Like having coming to the table with like being like, yeah, I know what you guys are about and I can help. Like that's really cool. So yeah,
I love that. Very cool. All right. The other thing that I wanted to talk about is how you describe the company culture. You said you used go or let's go as your word. Could you expand on that a little bit for us?
Yeah, so related to what I was just saying, it's like there's so many problems like yet to be solved and still existing that it's like we really like it when people are like excited to like have that like that agency and be part of the team, but are not like necessarily waiting for like to be told like, oh, here is the problem. It's like, yeah, let's go. Let's all like, you know, like figure out how do we host the best on sale for like this, you know, this client we might not even have yet. Like what would it feel like to like host like, you know, the craziest like Beyonce on sale concert? Like, wow, like how do we get there? Like that's kind of a fun thing that I think really embodies the culture. Like I feel like people are really excited about like, you know, what their specific team or like part of the like mission is to get to that. So
oh, thank you, Tiffany. I just want to say a huge thank you. This has been wonderful to spend the last hour with you. I've had a wonderful time. I know that the chat has been blowing up, so our attendees seem to have gotten a ton out of today's event as well. But I just want to say big thank you for taking time to spend with us. It's been absolutely great. Thank you so much.
Oh, thanks for hosting. And it was great to chat.
Yeah. All right. Huge thank you to all of you, to all of our attendees out there. You submitted amazing questions, both prior to today's session as well as during the event. Thank you so much for all of that. These events truly would not exist without you. So we are incredibly happy that of the, you know, multiple opportunities that people have each day to, you know, to sign into events like this, to learn more. We are just so happy that you chose to spend that time today with us. Don't forget, take a look at SeatGeek's open roles. I put some links back in the chat thread there. Also some links to places you can look into our past events. You can search our whole archive there as well. But definitely, if this was your first event with Power to Fly, thank you so much for coming. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you loved it, and we can't wait to see you again. If this is your 10th or 20th or 100th Power to Fly event, thank you so much to all of our frequent flyers. I love seeing y'all. I love seeing familiar names or familiar avatars in the participants window there. So thank you so much for coming. That's going to be it for today's session, but we've got great content coming for you tomorrow as well. So take a look at some of the stuff we've got offered, and hopefully we'll see you on an upcoming event soon. Bye, everybody.